know what you put in it, keep doing it. We've got, today's going to flow a little bit differently. This is Camp Sunday, so just some real quick things you need to know. We will not be getting up here doing announcements unless it's just some special deal we got going on. From now on, we've got this nice pretty TV right above the coffee where everybody can gather and hang out. See the announcements up there. Miss Raven, are you going to have them up here on Sundays too? At the beginning and the end, she's also going to have announcements up here. So if you want any of those, there's TV and up here. With that said, I do have one announcement. Mr. Tim asked that if you're going to come to the men's breakfast, is that next Sunday?
28.
28. There is a sign-up sheet on that back table for the men's breakfast. We're just trying to get a head count and know how many to prepare for. With that being said, this next part I got right here, we had a youth conference yesterday, and excuse me, and we had a small rodeo or cowboy challenge afterwards. So, is Miss Charlotte Kelly here? There she is. Come on up here for a second. The rest of her team is not here. They come from up north Alabama. Miss Charlotte's team was first place winners. They had 3 events that they had to compete in: trailer loading, wild steer, barrel race. Hey Matt, you're on. Hey Matthew, your mic's on.
Huh?
Your mic's on.
Hey, it's a good thing I wasn't in the bathroom.
I thought Raven's voice got real deep on Anyway, they had a wild steer barrel race. They had a trailer load event, and then they had I don't know what you call it, blindfolded horse race. I like it. So we did things a little different. Miss Charlotte's team, they won first at 3 minutes and 5 seconds. The second place team, Jack Knowles and Maverick Franks. Y'all want to come up here for just a second? Come on, Mr. Jack. On this thing was Annabeth Drake, Jack Knowles, and Maverick Franks. They were 3 seconds behind first place. They come in at 3:08. It was a tight competition. Everybody did really well, so we want to give them a round of applause.
Hey,
And y'all won't know probably know the rest of these. Well, I'm sorry. Where's Owen? Is he here? There he is. Come on, Owen. You don't get left out. Owen had 2 other teammates, Avery Cleveland and Hunter Coffey from I can't think of Wholesome Dove Cowboy Church. They come in 3rd place, 4 minutes, 18 seconds. Hey, y'all fought hard for it though.
yeah.
We also told them we didn't have any buckles to give them yesterday. Some things we didn't get them here. So whenever the buckles come in, that first place team, they will be receiving their buckles, and we'll try to get a picture up here for y'all. I think Miss Ravens put some pictures up here and on the TV screen back there of that event, and there's also some pictures rolling around from camp. If y'all want to see those, y'all can tell it was a good time. With all that being said, this morning I need everybody that went to camp and participated in camp. I see all the smiles on the front row. Come on. Patrick, you ain't excused. Come on. Come on, oh. Did you go to camp? Huh? Come on. Oh, come on, Miss Lily. We ain't leaving you out there. You thought you was gonna get out of it. If you went to camp in any capacity, we would like you to come up here for this. I don't know why y'all all skipping over there. There's a whole middle right here. Come on. Fill it in. Come on. All right, I'll tell you one better. Y'all get up here. Y'all gonna try to hide. Come on. Yes, you turn the microphone. Malleable. Nothing. Lacey? The women folk are hiding from us.
We had like a co-director up there too, Mallory. Yeah, I think she should be up here because she did a lot of work.
She did do a lot of work.
Come on, Miss Mallory. Mom, come on.
Everybody's happy. Come on.
Yeah, you don't come up there and tell everybody that you are one of them.
Marcy, I know you were at camp. Everybody. Y'all think y'all excused. Everybody. Look around. Did I miss anybody? Where's she at? All right, y'all give me a second. I'm getting a lot of names here. Caitlin, Tim Thornton, Tanya. I don't know why y'all hiding. Y'all are all at camp. Come on. This is Camp Sunday. Y'all better come on. Josiah. We're going to have the stage full in a second. Where's Miss J?
We're just going to get it done.
Come on. Y'all be hiding. Miss J. Julia? Drew? Oh, she said you ain't got to run far.
That is.
All right, is that everybody that went to camp? I think so. Amy, come on. That's everybody now. All these fine people went to camp. They participated in some kind of way. They either went to camp or they helped with camp. If you've never been, it's a lot to put on, but it is well worth every second that you spend there. And we want to give the workers a big round of applause, all of you. I think Mr. Mike has something to say real quick.
Hey, I just want to share this. So you guys that have been here and you know kind of how we did it. Before we went to camp, we had some little ear tags back there on the back, and every one of them had a number on it, and we couldn't get all the kids here, and so I wanted to try to be fair to everybody. So what I would like to do is if you got a number, I'm just going to call them out. And I'm going to encourage you at some point in time just to find, if you took a number home to pray for somebody or to pray for 10 people, I'm just going to call the numbers out. And I would just like for you to some point in time, if you still have that number, if you know where that number is, to write the name down by the numbers that you got. And at some point in time, just find that child, find that sponsor, find that person that worked and served, and just tell them that you were praying for them, because I'm telling you, you'll never know what that means to that kid or that person. So if you got something to write with, and if any of you miss this, through all this, and y'all also, if you're here and your kid went to camp and I mispronounced their name, I'm just going to go ahead and apologize right now, so don't throw rocks. Number 1 was Dallas Carpenter. Number 2 was Miss Harper Ann Mansion. Number 3 was Ada Galloway. Number 4 was Miss Caitlin Carpenter. Number 5 was Cooper Knowles. Number 6 was Blake Kentrail. Number 7 was Bowen Barrett. Number 8 was Leland John. Number 9 was Dane Rodriguez. Number 10 was Bane Kelly. Number 11 was Casey Lansford. Number 12 was Corbett Castleberry. Number 3 was Leighton Bailey. Number 13. 14 was Noko C. Self. 15 was Hunter Barron. 16 was Braxton Elks. 17 was J.R. Brooks. 18 was the one and only Ender Rodriguez. 19 was mine. Number 20 was Laney Combs. 21 was Amy Bowden. 22 was Tanya. I did that at camp. 22 was Taryn McCall. If any of y'all see her, you're going to be doing good, right? Yes. Blake said that sounded terrible. I better address that. If you see Taryn McCall, it's because she lives in Oklahoma. So I'm just saying. Sorry about that. I put my foot in my mouth better than anybody in this world. Number 23 was Elena Speck. 24. This is terrible. Talia Speck. I'm sorry, Talia. I can't read nor write. Tora Dale was 25. Aubrey Burns was 26. 27 was Ramsey Lansford. 28 was Presley Lansford. 29 was Paisley Chapel. 30 was Charlotte Kelly. 31 was Madison Williams. 32 was Savannah Thrower. 33 was Riley McDonald. 34 was Tabitha Wheeler. 35 was Asher Speck. 36 was Josiah Speck. 37 was Levi Wheeler. 38 was Jack Knowles. 39 was Owen Darden. 40 was Brenton Kimtrail. 41 was Alex Barrett. 42 was Colton Sherham. 43 was Caleb Sherham. 44 was Eli Burns. 43 was Jaden McDonald. 45 was Mallory Knowles. 46 was Raven. 47 was Drew. 48 was Mr. Tim. 49 was Miss Amy. Number 50 was Miss Marcy. 51 was Will Darden. 52 was Lane Darden. 53 was Shelby. 54 was Lacey. 55 was Dakota. 56 was Tanya. 57 was Daniel. 58 was Miss Tina. 59 was Miss Angie. 60 was Miss Mary. 61 was Miss J. 62. There's two people on this list that ain't on the stage. 62 was Miss Jamie and 63 was Mr. Chris. I can't go anymore. I'll be auctioning them off.
We got some songs from camp that we're going to do. These first two, who said no songs? These first two are just kind of some fun ones they learned at dance moves to. First one's Broke My Heart. Broke My Heart. I don't know why y'all acting embarrassed. Y'all did this all through camp. Well, I know Patrick did.
Hey, y'all can all stand up. Stand up. Help do it. It's very simple, guys.
I need something above.
Hey guys, I want you to think about something. I know we had fun, but I cannot explain to you the very first year that we went to camp and the band played this song right here. And I stood in the very back and I thought I had shown up to take all these kids, to draw all these kids closer to Christ. But I'm going to ask Miss Raven, I know you're tired, I know it's hot, I know it's humid, I know it's sticky, but I'm going to ask her to play that song one more time. And because here's what I know, this many people couldn't show up here this morning if this last week has just been wonderful. I know this, there's things that have happened to you this week, man, that are hurt. You're not really understanding how to handle it. And I hope when we open His Word in just a second, I can hopefully help with that. But I want you to think about this song. Man, because how awesome is it to be just wore out and wrecked out and just wore down from your whole week. But to ask Him just to flow through your life like a river and to cleanse you. So I'm going to ask her to play that song, and we're not going to do anything special. I just want you to listen to that song and just take a moment with God and just ask Him to flow through your life and just to cleanse all that crap that you've been dealing with, all that things that's been going on, and just allow Him to minister to you in this moment. Man, how about that right there? Hey, a couple of real quick things, and I know, like Dakota said, and here's this, and some of y'all may disagree here, but do you realize that what we do on Sunday mornings is nowhere in this book? Like, nowhere in this book is, man, does it, what you got ready and showed up for this morning, nowhere in that whole book does it say that's what it looks like. But here's what it does say in Hebrews 10:25. It says, let us not quit getting together. Let us not quit gathering together. And so, man, that's what we do. But I told Raven and Dakota the other day, like, man, we started this deal out, and our whole deal is to try to reach people that don't feel comfortable going to church, like traditional church. And so, man, when we stand up here and we read 52 announcements, like, man, it just feels like church to me. And so, man, I know this is Cowboy Church, and I know that, man, we are not the most technologically advanced, or like that's the stigma, but I will tell you this, those guys that run a lot of cattle, I promise you this, they have a laptop in their truck when they're riding through their pasture, keeping up with how many still above ground and how many is laying on their side. They got digital scales when they weigh their cattle before they ship them. So us hanging the TV up back there with an announcement. So when you go get your coffee or you get your water, just look and watch that thing, and it's going to tell you what's going on. And every once in a while, we're going to bring up the things that are fixing to happen or whatever, just so everybody understands. And one of those is going to happen this Friday night. I don't know if any of the rest of you guys watch social media whatsoever, but in Sylacauga, Childersburg, there's not a whole lot for our teenagers to do. And so it's one thing to sit back as a church, as a community, and say, yeah, that's terrible that our kids don't have anything to do. It takes something else to stand up and say, hey, well, let's do something about that. So this Friday night is the very first home Fayetteville Jamboree game. And so after the ball game, we're going to open up the church. We're going to have 4 or 5 cornhole boards set up out here. And we just want to invite the teenagers to come. We're not going to preach to them. We're not going to ask them to sing Kumbaya. We're not going to have a massive time of prayer. We just want to have them to have a place where they can come and hang out, get some free food, throw the cornhole around. If they just want to sit around and talk. So from whenever the football game is till 12 o'clock. And at 12, we're going to shut it down, and they can, I mean, that's between y'all and them, what they do after that. But until 12 o'clock, they'll have a safe place to stay. And we're not going to sit over there on top of them. There's going to be plenty of adults here just to kind of monitor the thing, be hall monitors. But if they want to go sit over there and hang out, we're not going to bash on them. We just want to love on them and show them that we do care about them and we understand what they're going through. And so if that's not just for Fayetteville kids. If your kid goes to Sylacauga, we're going to try to start doing it every Fayetteville home game just because that's what works for us. We can't literally do it every time just because it takes a lot of people to cook and do all that. But we're going to try to start doing it every home game. As soon as the football game's over, they're more than welcome to come. So if they go to Childersburg, Sylacauga, if they're playing at home that week, invite those kids as well. So if you see that on Facebook, share it, but that's what that is. One other thing, Miss Brittany turned 23 yesterday. If y'all would give her a big round of applause. I heard earlier she turned 40, but I also heard it was 23. And you guys might not know this, but there was a young lady that came and sang for us yesterday for the youth conference. Her name's Miss Lily. And when we started, we all met in Joel's barn. Joel and Robin's barn, I'm sorry, I'll include you. And that's where we started the church. And and when Miss Lily and Mr. Johnny and Miss Terry would come, well, Mr. Johnny and Miss Terry, they live an hour and a half away, but they're here this morning, and they've been married for 3 years this morning. You can see, that's right. No, but man, hey, let's pray before we get started. Father, I just come to you this morning, Lord. I am so thankful for today. God, I know it's hot, but God, I am so thankful for this place. God, I'm so thankful for every one of those students, every one of those people who came and served at camp. God, I'm so thankful for what you do at camp. But God, I'm going to come. Your word says, leave for us to enter the throne room of grace boldly. So, Father, I'm going to boldly come to your throne room this morning. God, I'm going to ask that, man, there are people here this morning that are hurting, that are broken, that are not really sure which way to go. God, that your word would show them that. God, I pray that you would get me completely out of the way because I don't have a single thing to offer, a single person in here. But God, I know your word does. So, Father, I pray that you would bless it. God, I pray that it would be you that speaks. God, I pray that it be you that runs through my mind this morning. God, I love you and I praise you and I ask these things in your name. Amen. Hey, one other thing I want to say to you, and I know there's some of you here that this is your very first time to ever be here. And so there's something, we did it for a little while and then we kind of got lax on it. But if this is your very first time, there's some little white bags on that table right back there between the nursery and the ladies' restroom. We want you to have one of those just as a gift to us. There's a couple of things in there for you. And then there's some things, maybe you're here this morning, you're like, what in the crap? Why is there gravel on the floor? Why is there no air conditioner? It's Alabama in the summertime. Why have we not taken up an offering? And I've been here for 30 minutes. So if you want to understand why we do and how we do, there's a little pamphlet in there and there's some things that we just want you to have. So if you would grab one of those for each one of those families that are here this morning, we would, man, just be so honored for that. We would love to have you come back with us anytime. If you got your Bibles this morning, I'm going to ask you to turn to the book of Matthew chapter 14. And I want to talk about a story, man, and most of you probably heard it. Most of you probably heard parts of it at some point in time in your life. If you've ever been to Bible school or Sunday school or church, I mean, this story is preached over and over and over again. But, man, this last week, man, it really became relevant to me. And it's one of those things that I say all the time, like, I'm not fixing to reveal something that nobody's ever thought about. I'm not fixing to share with something with you like that nobody has ever figured out or understood. But I do want to share something with you this morning that I think a lot of times we just forget. A lot of times we forget, like, man, when life gets tough, we forget where we can go and we forget how we can handle that. But in Matthew chapter 14, I want to read this verse to you. Matthew chapter 14, verse 30. This is what it says. It says, but when he saw the strong wind and the waves, he was terrified and began to sink. Save me, Lord, he shouted. That was Peter. But has it ever been you? Has it ever been you? Because, see, there's probably never been a time where you were walking on water and you felt like you were sinking. But I bet there's been a time in your life where, man, you and your spouse weren't getting along and you were disagreeing, and there was a time you felt like you were sinking. I bet there's been a time when you were at your job, your occupation, your career, and you felt like, man, it was just crumbling in around you. I bet there's been a time in your life where you were sat in a doctor's office and you thought something was going on in your life and something was going on in your child or your spouse or your parents' life, and you were a little worried, and you sat there in front of the doctor and he told you what you didn't want to hear. So you began to sink. I bet there's been a time in your life where you looked and it was like this time of the month, about halfway through, and you still knew you had all these bills to pay. And you look at your account and there's nothing there. So you felt like you were sinking. I bet if you're honest with yourself, you've been there. And I bet if we're all real honest with each other, some of you are there this morning. Some of you are there this morning. You showed up and you came here and you got a smile on your face, and if somebody comes up to you and introduces herself, or somebody that you know comes up to you and they're like, man, how you doing? This is what you're going to do, man. I'm blessed and highly favored. And in your mind, you're like, oh my God, I don't know what I'm going to do this afternoon. Oh my God, I do not know what I'm going to do tomorrow. Because tomorrow is the day. I do not know what I'm going to do next week, because next week is the day. I do not know if my marriage is going to last through the rest of the day. Because we woke up this morning and it was just, Lord, and I don't know how I'm going to make it through. And so you look at your life and you feel like you're sinking. I want to tell you, just I'm not going to take for granted that everybody knows this whole passage. But Matthew chapter 14, starting in verse 22, this is what it says. Let me give you just a little bit of a background. So right before this part in Matthew chapter 14, the disciples and Jesus had been on this hillside, and Jesus had been preaching, and it was getting late in the day. And so, man, the disciples come to Jesus and they're like, hey, sir, we might want to send all these people home, because it's dinner time and we don't have any food. And Jesus says, y'all feed them. And they're like, dude, we've got 2 fish and a loaf of bread. And he says, y'all feed them. So the disciples bring what little bit they have to Jesus, and he breaks the bread and he breaks the fish, and it says they fed over 5,000 men that day. So they all get through eating, and after that it says the disciples gathered up 12 baskets of leftovers. And so that's where we are in Matthew chapter 14, verse 22. Listen what it says. It says, immediately after this, Jesus insisted that his disciples get back in the boat and cross to the other side of the lake while he sent the people home. I want you to think about something, because depending on what interpretation of the Bible, not interpretation, but whatever, King James, NIV, whatever you're reading there, it might read a little bit different. But my Bible said the very first word is immediately. So as soon as this happened, Jesus said, hey, y'all don't hang out here, y'all go. Y'all go. And then it goes on, the third, fourth word in that sentence is Jesus insisted. Like, not just, hey, y'all go, but he's like, y'all go now. Guys, I'm telling y'all need to go now. Like go. He insisted that they went. And you might not think much about that, except for the fact that Jesus knew that they needed to get out of there in a hurry. He says, so they got in the boat to cross to the other side of the lake while he sent the people home. Verse 23 says, after sending them home, he went up into the hills by himself to pray, and night fell while he was alone. I want you to know something this morning, because maybe you show up here and maybe you come to every once in a while to that church, or maybe every once in a while you read your Bible, maybe every once in a while, man, before you eat your meal, you pray. But I need you to hear this right now. Man, the only way that Jesus Christ, the Son of God, knew that he could continue doing what he needed to do was he had to take some time to get along with his Father. He had to take, if this is Jesus, the man that just turned 2 fish and a loaf of bread into feed that many people, the man that created miracle after miracle, turned water into wine, healed the sick, caused the blind to see, the paralyzed to walk. This man had all this power come through God, but he still had to have time to get along with the Father. And so many times, me and you feel like, man, we'll just make it without him. And we wonder why our lives are wrecked out. We wonder why things, man, just creep in on us and destroy us and wreck us out. Is because a lot of times we don't take time to get alone by ourselves and pray. You keep reading in verse 24, it says, meanwhile the disciples were in trouble, far away from land, for a strong wind had risen, and they were fighting heavy waves. I know this beyond a shadow of a doubt this morning. There's at least one person sitting in here, and it might be all of you. The strong winds on your life, and the waves are really tall. I'm not just talking about you had a flat tire this morning. I'm talking about you need some tires and you don't know how you can buy them. I'm not talking about you're hot right now. I'm talking about your power got cut off 2 weeks ago and it's smoking. I'm not talking about, man, you had a little dispute over what to eat for breakfast. I'm talking about, man, y'all have already been talking to a divorce lawyer, and I'm talking about the wind is strong and the waves are high. That's where the disciples got to. That's where they were. That's where they were as they started to cross the lake, and they got about halfway out, and it says they were far away from Jesus and they were in trouble. I want you to hear this next part. And there again, I think so many times we read through the Bible and we miss something. But in Matthew chapter 14, verse 25, it says about 3 o'clock in the morning. I don't know about you, but there has not been just a whole lot. I mean, I usually sleep pretty good. If I'm tired, even the weight of the world, sometimes I can still go to sleep. But there are 1 or 2 times in my life that I can literally remember something bothering me and weighing on me and just stressing me out to the max, that it was 3 o'clock in the morning and I was still up. I'm talking about something I was worried about, something that was going on. And it's so crazy, even in my own life this week as I read that, and it's never really just jumped out at me, but it says about 3 o'clock in the morning. Maybe you've never been there. I hope that you never are. But man, when something is on you, I'm talking about something tough. Sleep's not even an option. Sleep's not even an option, and that's exactly, it would be easy to say, well, the disciples were in the boat, they had nowhere else to go. They could have laid down in the boat. But it says about 3 o'clock in the morning, Jesus came toward them walking on the water. If you go on to read, it says, when the disciples saw him walking on the water, they were terrified. In their fear, they cried out, it's a ghost. I'm just telling you guys this. So many times we miss what God's trying to do in our life because it looks like something that scares us. And I'm not saying that God is scary. I'm talking about our perception. Jesus didn't change himself. It doesn't say that Jesus took on the form of this or that and it changed his appearance. It just says they thought he was a ghost. This is the same man they've been walking with, the same man they've been eating dinner with and breakfast and washing each other's feet, the same man that they've watched time after time again. They literally just those fish and that bread and break it up and make it into what it was, this miraculous miracle, guess what? One of the disciples had to lay it in his hands. So I know at least one of them was in the boat literally hours before that, had looked him in the eye and said, here's all I got. This is all I got. But yet when he starts to come to him, they're like, man, is this a ghost? So many times God starts to want to try to do something in our lives, and we're like, man, that's a coincidence right there. Man, that doesn't look like God. You know why? Because as the church, and I'm not just talking about here, I'm talking about as a big church, we've created this perception that God's got to fit in this box like this right here. This is the only way that God can do anything miraculous in your life. But it's so wrong. And so it's easy for us to sit here and be like, how could they think Jesus was a ghost? But how many times has God tried to do something in your life and you tried to write it off as something because it didn't look like that box you had put him in? Verse 27 says, but Jesus spoke to them at once. Don't be afraid, he said. Take courage, because I'm here. I need to tell you something this morning. If you're sitting here, don't be afraid. Don't be afraid. Take courage, because it's who? Do not be afraid. Whatever that thing is, whatever that storm in your life is this morning that's just wrecking you out, don't be afraid. Because he is right here in the midst of this. He is right there in the midst of your storm. Too many times we miss him. Verse 28 says, then Peter called to him, Lord, if it's really you, tell me to come to you walking on the water. I need you to hear this right here, because I think sometimes there again, and for you guys that don't know me, I grew up in church my whole life. I've been Pizza Hut, popcorn, putt, locked in like that. I've been there, man, when church was going on, and I've been there when it wasn't. But Peter is in the boat, and so it's real easy to be like, well, okay, well, they thought he was a ghost, and then they wrote it off, and this and that. But I need to tell you something this morning. The God that I serve is so big that he's not going to bother if you ask him if this is really you. Matter of fact, in John, I want to share scripture with you this morning in 1 John chapter 4, verses 1 through 3. It says, dear friends, do not believe everyone who claims to speak by the Spirit. You must test them to see if the Spirit they have comes from God. For there are many false prophets in the world. This is how we know if they have the Spirit of God. If a person claiming to be a prophet acknowledges that Jesus Christ came in a real body, that person has the Spirit of God. But if someone claims to be a prophet and does not acknowledge the truth about Jesus, that person is not from God. Such a person has the spirit of the Antichrist, which you heard is coming into the world and indeed is already here. You know what that's saying? He's saying, hey, it's okay if you say, is it really you, God? God, is this really you that's speaking to me? Is this really you that's trying to get me to go this direction? God, is this really you that's speaking into my life right now? It's okay. I think so many times we're like, well, I don't want to offend him. No, I promise you, he cannot be offended. He sent his son to die on the cross and shed his blood for you and me. I promise you, you asking him, God, is this you or is this not you? In this situation or that situation is not going to offend him. But that's exactly what Peter did. Verse 29, Jesus said, yes, come. Come, Peter. So Peter went over the side of the boat and walked on the water towards Jesus. You know what? I think a lot of times when I've heard messages from other people, and I probably have even said it at some point in time in my own life, but it's real easy for us to be like, well, man, I can't believe that Peter got out on the water and Jesus was calling to him and Peter was walking on water. That's really cool. And then Peter took his eyes off of him and started to sink. You know, we knock Peter a lot of times like, man, oh, Peter, he didn't have much faith. But let me tell y'all this, just for you guys that aren't keeping score, there was 11 other guys in that boat when Jesus started coming. So if anything else, I got to give Peter credit for the fact that he was the only one that stepped out. The rest of them were waiting to see what's going to happen, but Peter at least was willing to step out of the boat. You keep reading in verse 30. It says, but when he saw the strong wind and the waves, he was terrified and began to sink. Save me, Lord, he shouted. See, Peter, like me and you, he wanted to put all his hope and faith in Jesus. But when life started to happen around him, he started noticing all that stuff that was going on. And he began to sink. The whole point this morning is this. Where's your focus? I shared something last Friday in there again, or last Sunday. This has absolutely nothing to do with me. Nothing whatsoever. Nothing. Please don't look at me because I am nothing to look at, nothing to think anything great about. The only thing good about Matt Knowles is that Jesus Christ lives right here. Everything else is wretched and sorry. But last Friday, man, I was driving to work, and I told you guys this last Sunday, but last Friday I was driving to work, and I was just having one of those moments. You ever have those moments where you just feel like, man, you and God are just like, it's good. I'm talking about like you are so in tune and just right there with Him. Man, and at one point in time, driving down 280, man, I just, tears were just flowing down my face like a 12-year-old little girl, man. Like, it was just so good. And I was just asking God and praying, and we were talking, and I told y'all, man, about my prayer last week, and I told you guys, like, man, it was all about, like, hey, man, if you're willing to do this, go without food for the whole weekend. And so that's what I did. I'm not going to share all that again, but like so I didn't eat Friday, Saturday, until Sunday as soon as we left here, because I felt like that's where me and God were. And so, man, Sunday afternoon was great. Man, we went and ate lunch, and Mexican has never tasted so good. Them tortilla chips that are probably 3 days old, I'm telling you, they were delicious. Sunday afternoon was great. We got to hang out as a family. Monday was good. But guess what? I went from here, and it wasn't like a roller coaster. It was just here. And the week just rolled on and rolled on. And it just felt like the gap was getting bigger and bigger. Things started happening, and I'm like, my God, why am I going through this? You want me to tell y'all what happened? I lost my focus. I'm not saying that it never says in the Bible that when Peter got out of the boat and started walking towards Jesus, the wind and the waves quit. It never says that the storm quit. It never says that the lightning didn't quit popping around. It never says that the waves weren't still splashing him in the face. It never says that the wind wasn't blowing his hair everywhere. It's just the fact he didn't notice it. You know why? Because when he stepped out of the boat, his focus was on Jesus. And as soon as he began to take his focus off of Jesus, he began to sink. The camp verse for this year was Isaiah 43:19, and this is what it says. It says, I'm about to do something new. Can you not see it? I've already begun. But if you back up to Isaiah 43:18, and if you read through Isaiah 43, Jesus is telling them about how when he delivered the Israelites out of captivity and how he had got them out of Pharaoh's capture, and he was leading them across the Red Sea, and he reminded them of how when Pharaoh and his army got in the middle of the Red Sea, he allowed the sea to close over on top of them. And I don't know about you, but I've even preached this a lot of times, and I want to apologize to you this morning, because after reading this parable, this story this week, and thinking about Isaiah 43:18, it really got me. I know I am, because it's where it says I am. But so many times I know, man, we start going through something and we want to remind ourselves of what he did. Like, we want to remind ourselves of what he did. And so I might even have preached the same message before and said, man, I can't believe that Peter didn't remember that he had just watched Jesus take those fish and that bread and turn it into this massive feast. Why didn't he remember that when he was stepping out there? But Isaiah 43:18 says, hey, God's doing something new in your life. And 19 and 18 says, forget those things. You know why? Because when we start remembering those things, here's what we do automatically. We're like, well, this is how God delivered me in this last circumstance. So I'm going through this right here, right now, and he's not doing what he did before. And so guess what? Our focus begins to fall off of him. And so now all of a sudden we're like, man, where are you at? You have left me. All because it doesn't look the way it did before. That's why Isaiah 43 says, 18 says, you've got to forget those things behind you. Peter had to forget the fact that he just watched Jesus do that. All Peter had to do was keep his focus on Jesus. I want to read this next part to you because I want you to not miss this. It says, so Peter went over the side of the boat, walking on water towards Jesus. Verse 30 says, but when he saw the strong wind and the waves, he was terrified and began to sink. Save me, Lord, he shouted. Verse 31, listen to this. It says, Jesus immediately reached out and grabbed him. You have so little faith, Jesus said. Why did you doubt me? I've read that passage once. I've heard it read before. And it's real easy to focus on the fact that Jesus was talking to Peter and was like, hey, Peter, why did you doubt me? You have so little faith. And I never caught this part. Peter had walked so far towards Jesus because in my mind, always Peter took a step or two and then he began to sink. But this is what it says. It says, Jesus immediately reached out and grabbed him. That means for Jesus to immediately reach out and grab him, that Peter had to be within an arm's distance of him. That means that Peter had to step out of the boat and walk to him and walk to him. And then he kept his focus on him for a good while, but eventually he got to him. But he was so close to being where it was that Jesus wanted him to be, that Jesus could just reach down and grab him. I want to make sure that you hear that this morning, because I guarantee you there's some of you this morning that are sitting here and your focus is on him. Like you're going through that storm and your focus is on him, and you just keep walking, and you can start to hear the waves and the wind, but you are right there. One more step. That's all I need to tell you this morning. One more step. You go on. Verse 32 says, when they climbed back in the boat, the wind stopped. Then the disciples worshipped him. You are really the Son of God. They exclaimed. Don't miss this, guys. As soon as Jesus got in the boat, the storm stopped. I want you to ponder this, because I'm going to stand here and I'm going to tell you God loves you, and then I'm going to say something that in your mind might contradict that. But we would be foolish to stand here for 1 second and think that Jesus didn't know that storm was coming, when he immediately insisted that the disciples go across the lake. While they couldn't see, he knew it was coming. And that thing that you're going through right now, he knew it was coming. My Bible says that all things work together for the good of those who love him. Not good things, not some things, but all things. And storms and wrecks. You say, well, how can that? I'm telling you, I've seen the most horrific, ugly, terrifying things do mighty and powerful things in people's lives. But the only way that ever has the ability to do that is when their focus is on him. When their focus is 100% on him. I'm not talking about some churchy thing. I'm not talking about some religious thing. I could give 5 rips about any of that. I'm talking about your focus being on Jesus. And it's so easy to get it off because the wind gets tough. I told somebody this week, Friday I was driving home, and the first time in a long time somebody told me I was number 1. And she was ecstatic about it. I'm going to let some of y'all slow. Y'all processing what I just said. And you know what I wanted to do? I wanted to tell her she was double number 1. I know y'all are like, oh, I wouldn't do that. I'm a good Christian bullcrap. Listen. You know the only thing that kept a smile on my face? What was playing on my radio. And my focus at that moment was on him. And I don't say that to be like, because I promise you, if that wasn't on the radio and I'd been listening to friends in low places, I promise you, Matt Knowles is not, I told y'all this a second ago, I am a sorry human being. My focus was there. Not on this. I'm going to ask Miss Lily to come up here. And if you guys, this is your first time here, we don't normally do this. But I was listening to Miss Lily sing yesterday. Are one of these hot? The color red? What color? Any color? Any color. Here's what happens, I think, a lot of times. Somebody would share a message like this, and then we go home. Guess what? I promise you this. Even if you are struggling in life right now, and you're like, my goodness, man, that is exactly where I'm at. And thank you for that. I'm just going to read Matthew 14 this week, and I'm going to keep my focus on him. You walk out of here, and that horse kicks a cow in the head. And guess what? Your focus just went from here to there. This person pulls out behind you and cuts you off in the church parking lot. I know. Can you believe that happens? And you lose your focus. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to ask Miss Lily to sing this song. And when she gets through singing, we'll be dismissed. But I'm going to ask you this. You can stand, sit down, close your eyes, do it. just going to ask you this. Because maybe for you, life's great right now. Like maybe everything is wonderful and there's no problems, no issues. I do know this. Every single person, beyond a shadow of a doubt, I don't care who you are, where you've been, where you come from, every single person in this room is in one of these three places. You're in the middle of a wreck, you just came out of a wreck, or you're fixing to go through a wreck. Because John 16:33 says, in this world you'll have trouble, but fear not, because I've overcome the world. So I know that not a single one of us sitting in here are not going to have to deal with heartache and trouble. So maybe life's good for you. I'm telling you, take this time right now to recenter your focus. Just in the quietness moment as she sings, get your focus back on Him before you leave here and start your week. blood that you shed for us on that cross. Father, I pray as we leave this place, God, that we would not lose our focus. God, that as we go to work, as we go to school, as we play our sports, God, that we would not lose our focus when the wind and the waves begin to increase. God, I love you so much. I praise you and I ask this name in his precious name. Amen. Guys, I hope you all have an awesome day.